So those are the categories sorted. Let's go into gender. Now, I don't really have to pull this into a chart to see that unfortunately the vast majority of cases here, they were men. If you do want to get a sense of what percentage we're dealing with, I will just do a chart just for funsies. And taking this in the chart, yeah, 77% were men. Now again, we're just treating this as superficial information, as data, as an interesting fact. It would be an extremely bad idea to assume that most male doctors are dodgy and most female doctors are actually okay based on these stats. And I also don't know why I'm pointing it out. Let's just leave it as it is. 77% of these cases were male doctors. Now, I've also created 3 categories for the potential outcome. The first category was that the doctor was suspended. The second category was that they lost their license. And the third category was that they had to retrain. And similarly, when it comes to the offenses or the things that the doctors did that were criticized, sometimes a doctor was suspended and also needed to retrain. And so I ticked the box twice. Now let's get a sense of what the graph is showing here. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these doctors lost their licenses for the things that ACPRA needed to get involved in. Having said that, there was definitely a trend that I noticed. Even though the ages of these doctors weren't disclosed, a lot of doctors following a serious complaint to ACPRA just didn't renew their registration. In a lot of cases, you could get the sense that these doctors were kind of at the end of their careers and just felt that this might be the right time to retire. Now, again, I don't want to draw any conclusions here. I don't have any data when it comes to the ages of these doctors. I don't want to imply that older doctors are getting more complaints to ACPRA. I don't know. Is that the case? Maybe someone from ACPRA can let me know. But essentially, I did notice that trend that a lot of doctors were just like, yeah, maybe this is the right time. One thing I didn't mention here and kind of applies to more or less all of the cases, the doctors did have to cover ACPRA's fees for the investigation. And that generally was around kind of $5,000, $6,000 from what I could tell. Right, well, this next part is going to be a little bit fun. I've basically grouped it into states. And depending on where you're from, you're either going to go, yeah, or that's not too great. And let's get a sense of which state had the most ACPRA complaints. And leave a comment below if you're from that state that did really badly, or if you're from the state that did really, really well. Let's jump straight into the states that did really, really well. Tasmania, no cases. Northern Territories, no cases. Now again, I'm saying states that have done really, really well. It is possible that there are doctors there that are practicing very badly and practicing really bad medicine, but patients just aren't complaining about them. Conversely, it is possible that in the states where there were a lot of complaints, the patient demographics are just different and people are very quick to complain. So you can kind of decide which version of the story you want to stick to. All right, so how many of you guys are from Victoria? You better watch out. Is the take-home message from this graph. Quite a few in WA where I am currently practicing. So if I can see this correctly, there are none in New South Wales as well. So I did say Tasmania and Northern Territories, but New South Wales also didn't have any cases described in the ACPRA newsletters. Now, the last thing that I was analyzing when going through these cases was the specialty of the offending doctor. Now, as you can see, GP featured quite heavily here. And when I put that into the graph, you will also get a sense that a lot of GPs get a lot of ACPRA complaints. Now, there are many reasons for this. From the research that I was doing and the teaching that I got from the General Medical Council, the 2 most commonly sued or complained about specialties were by and large GP and obstetrics and gynecology. And there are 2 separate reasons for this. Now, the first reason why there are so many complaints against GPs is volume. It's a numbers game. A GP will typically see 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 patients a day. And I'm not pointing the finger at other specialties and say, you know, get your finger out and see more patients. That's not what we're doing here. It's just the nature of the job. You see so many patients, and even if 0.01% complains, well, then as a GP, those complaints will roll in much faster than say if you're in another specialty where you're only seeing, 8 to 10 patients a day. Now, the reason why Obs and Gynae is in second place when it comes to complaints is when things go bad in obstetrics or gynecology, things unfortunately go really bad. And if you remember your obstetric placements or you're an obstetrician yourself, some of the things that I have seen during my placement were traumatizing, and I will literally never forget them. They're really, really terrible situations. I'm not going to describe these situations because they will trigger me. But when things go bad in obstetrics, they go really, really bad. And so the severity of those adverse events naturally trigger complaints. Right, I hope that makes sense. I want to lighten up the mood here a little bit. So why don't we do that by creating a graph in my spreadsheet? Right, here we are. So in the last 12 months between Feb 2023 and Feb 2024, most of the cases were against GPs, and I've already explained why, about 40% of those cases, undisclosed in 24% of the times. This also pertained to hospital doctors that were not of a particular specialty, but ended up having a complaint against them. Ophthalmology, unfortunately, featured a few times. I don't know why that is. We consider ophthalmology to be one of the Cinderella specialties where you don't really have to do on-calls, you make loads of money, and it's pretty easygoing. And yet here we are, quite a few complaints. And psychiatry had a few complaints. I'm trying to figure out whether I should say what I want to say. And maybe I won't, or maybe I'll just allude to it in a very general sense. There are a lot of prescriptions coming out of psychiatrists at the moment. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And the waiting times to see a psychiatrist are just phenomenally long. We're talking 6, 9, 12 months. And then also what I've noticed is that people are waiting really, really long for these appointments and are expecting a certain outcome. I feel like I've already said too much. And I'm wondering whether someone at some point will start looking into the volume of prescriptions that are being issued by psychiatrists and whether they are being issued in an appropriate manner. By and large, as I said, over 100,000 doctors out there, many thousand psychiatrists that are doing an absolutely brilliant job at what they're doing because it is a super difficult job. Trust me, I'm a doctor. But I'm wondering whether we will notice a trend when I analyze the cases in another 12 months, which I will definitely do because I love doing this. It's just really, really fun. Whether we will notice that little yellow slice just get a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. Right, guys, well, that's everything I have for you today. I hope that was useful, semi-useful. I hope it was a little bit informative. If you do have any topics that you want me to cover, or if you want me to cover cases in a little bit more detail and kind of describe them and describe the learning points from them, well, feel free to leave a comment below. You can always email me directly. Otherwise, guys, remember, Big Brother is watching. Behave yourselves and good luck.